Clapperboard, the letter and the lantern. A story of secrets, forgiveness, and coming home. In the heart of a forgotten town, hidden between hills and whispers of the past, sat a house cloaked in dust and memory. It had once been filled with laughter, children's footsteps echoing through wooden floors, the crackle of a fireplace warming winter nights. But now it stood silent, except for the gentle creak of a porch swing that moved even without the wind. This is the story of Margaret Holloway, an 82-year-old woman who had lived a life filled with routine, regret, and something she had never dared to speak of for 60 years. Every evening, she would light a single lantern on her porch. Rain or shine, winter or summer. People often asked why she did it. She never answered. But behind that glow was a promise made in silence, sealed with a letter never mailed, and a love never forgotten. Margaret had grown up in that house. It had belonged to her parents, strict, God-fearing people who believed in rules more than emotions. And like many daughters of that era, she did as she was told. She studied nursing, tended church, said yes ma'am and no sir, until she met Thomas. Thomas Whitaker was everything she wasn't supposed to want. A farm boy with dirt under his nails, wild dreams in his heart, and eyes that looked at her like she mattered. They met one summer at the town's harvest festival. He was carving pumpkins for the children. She was helping the elderly with tea and biscuits. Their eyes met, and the world stood still. From then on, they were inseparable. Margaret's parents forbade her from seeing Thomas. They called him unsuitable, uneducated, and worst of all, poor. She wrote a letter to her parents, explaining everything. But Thomas never came. She waited that night in the rain, under the train station's flickering light. And he never came. She returned home soaked and broken. Her letter was gone, and no one said a word. From that day forward, Margaret never spoke of Thomas again. Years passed. Her parents died. She never married, never moved. She worked as a nurse in the local clinic and lit the lantern every night. Until one autumn evening 60 years later, a young man knocked on her door. "Are you Margaret Holloway?" he asked gently. She nodded, unable to speak. This is for you. My grandfather asked me to deliver it. He passed away 2 weeks ago." She opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was her letter, unopened, unsent, and another one, written in careful, shaky handwriting. It was from Thomas. He explained everything. How her father intercepted the letter. How he had come to the train station, but was met by her father and threatened. How he was told Margaret had left town already, with another man. Heartbroken and ashamed, he enlisted in the military the very next day and was shipped overseas. Eli told stories of his grandfather, how he read poetry, grew wildflowers, kept her photograph in a wooden box beside his bed. And Margaret smiled through tears. For the first time in decades, she didn't feel alone. From that day forward, the townspeople noticed a change. Margaret, once quiet and distant, began inviting people to her porch. She laughed. She shared stories. Of love, of youth, of second chances. And every evening the lanterns were lit. It became a tradition in the town. On the anniversary of Thomas and Margaret's planned elopement, families across the community began lighting their own lanterns, in remembrance of lost love, missed chances, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, some stories are never truly over. They say a house is made of bricks and beams. But a home is built with hopes, secrets, and second chances. This is the story of Eleanor Hart, a retired schoolteacher in her late 60s, living quietly in a fading Victorian house in a small New England town. Her days passed with a rustling of old book pages and the sound of her cat's soft paws on the wooden floors. No one ever saw her leave. No one visited. Except once a year, on the night of the Lantern Festival, when she'd walk to the edge of the lake, place a lantern in the water, and watch it float away. This year it was different. As she opened the attic to retrieve her old lantern, a dusty wooden box fell from the top shelf. Inside was a bundle of unopened letters, addressed to her. Letters from her son, Michael. A son she hadn't seen in 22 years. Her hands trembled. Each envelope was dated. Every year since he left. The past rushed back like a storm. She remembered the fight. He was only 19, full of rebellion and fire, wanting to leave for California to pursue music. She, practical, frightened, wanted him to study, stay safe, and follow the path she had carved for him. Words were exchanged. Harsh ones. Final ones. He left that night and never returned. Eleanor had always believed he abandoned her. But now, these letters told a different story. A son who tried. A mother who never opened the door. The first letter read, "Dear Mom, I know you're angry. But I miss you. I found a small apartment near Venice Beach. I got a job at a record shop. I know it's not college, but I'm learning. Please write back." Tears blurred the words. She clutched the letter to her chest, realizing she had let her pride build walls too high for love to climb. As she read through the years, letter by letter, she saw his life unfold. His heartbreaks, his music, his daughter. Yes, her granddaughter Lily. He even wrote about visiting once, standing across the street, unable to knock. Why hadn't she known? Because she never opened the box. That night, as the town's lanterns floated peacefully across the lake, Eleanor lit one of her own. But instead of releasing it, she placed something inside. One of Michael's letters. The next morning, Eleanor made a decision that would change everything. She booked a ticket. She arrived on a Sunday afternoon, nervous and unsure. The address from the last letter was a modest home with a swing on the porch. Before she could knock, the door opened. A teenage girl stood there, headphones around her neck, guitar in hand. "Can I help you?" she asked. Eleanor hesitated. I'm looking for Michael Hart. I'm his mother." The girl blinked. "I'm Lily. Dad's inside. Please, come in." It was like walking into a forgotten dream. Family photos lined the hallway. Michael with Lily, a dog, friends. Laughter frozen in frames. And then, there he was. Older, grayer. But unmistakably her son. He looked at her, stunned. "Mum." And in that moment, without any words, the walls crumbled. He rushed forward, wrapping her in a hug that erased 2 decades of silence. They both wept. For the years lost. For the apologies never spoken. For the love that had never truly died. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor stayed with them. She got to know Lily, sharp, musical, full of life. She shared bedtime stories, taught her how to knit, watched her perform at school. And for the first time in years, Eleanor felt alive. On their last night together, they lit 3 lanterns, each carrying a letter of their own. One from Michael, one from Eleanor, and one from Lily. They watched them drift into the sky. A symbol not of loss, but of healing. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't come in grand gestures. Comes in quiet moments. In words finally spoken. In letters once lost. And hearts finally found. The letter and the lantern isn't just a story. It's a reminder that it's never too late. Come home.